right now. Okay, I want to welcome everybody here. We've had a really good turnout. I'm excited about this session, the very first of 6 sessions that we are offering virtually as a part of the STAR Virtual Professional Development. A quick thing I wanted to say about STAR, that stands for State Teach Ag Results, and that's through the National Teach Ag Campaign. Our Oklahoma group, the Committee of Teachers, is led by Cameron Dell, who's at Bartlesville, and then Emily Sewell and myself, and we wanted to organize this to be able to give teachers some ideas and some helpful tips as we are going into the new school year. The first session, of course, is about SAEs, and we have some really great presenters and topics that I think are a good variety and good things that we're excited about. A couple of house cleaning things I wanted to say about the Zoom meeting before we get started. I have defaulted everyone to be muted while there are presenters going through that. However, I'll leave it up to each individual presenter as to how they want to respond to questions. I do encourage you all, if you have some specific questions, to try to submit those through the chat, and I'll try to keep running track of those. And if we don't get to your questions, we'll try to get back to you after the meeting concludes. We're going to try to stick to the schedule and make this 60 minutes. Another thing I want to point out, I dropped in the chat, and hopefully everyone can see that, a PDF that is the schedule and the links to register for all the upcoming sessions. We only have one that we have yet to finalize, but you can see the tentative date for that and times. And so the remaining 5 sessions are coming up soon, and we hope to see you there. Each teacher is going to be about 10 to 15 minutes with each of their talks, and I want to make sure that we honor their time. But if you have questions, like I said, I'll remind you to try and submit those to the chat. You can submit them publicly to everyone if you think it's a question that would help a lot of people, or you can send a direct chat to that presenter. And so I'm going to share that file again so that everybody can see that and we have more people joining. But without any further delay, the order in which we're going to go is what was listed in the poster. So Tanya Middleton, who's at Mulhall, Orlando, is going to begin, followed by Jonathan Walden, and then Brett Scott at Bethel, and then Jeremy Schmidt will conclude. And so I'm going to hand it off to Tanya right now and let her go through and introduce herself, and then I'll be sharing a few things through the chat and looking and monitoring that. So Tanya, take it away. Let me unmute you. Okay.
Are we good? Everybody can hear me? Awesome. I'm going to do this fast and dirty because I've yet to do it under 13 minutes, and I was hoping to give y'all some question time at the end. But my name is Tanya Middleton. I grew up here in Oklahoma, but I have taught a year in Arkansas. I taught a year in Arkansas. I taught 6 in Kansas. I taught 5 at Hera, and I'm starting my 2nd year in Oklahoma, or at Mulhall, Orlando. And this gives me a really unique look into what SAEs are and how they're viewed in different locations throughout the country, and even somewhat how nationals looks at them. Having said all that, I'm going to run through this quick. Please feel free to put comments. I'll try to answer them at the end. But when I'm introducing SAEs to first-year members, this is my outline of SAEs with 8th graders. Some years when I have a lot of brand new freshmen, I will go ahead and do it with the freshmen, but my sophomores, juniors, and seniors that come in, they're going to get the down and dirty version of this, where other kids are working on other projects, they're going to be doing that. So before I get to my lesson on SAEs, the kids have a little pre-knowledge. First thing I do every year with every single class is SAEs are mentioned in my syllabus. It says in my syllabus that they will have an SAE, they will keep it on AET, or they will fail my class. I do that specifically so that they can get out of my class if they aren't willing to do those 2 very simple things. Now, I do give them time in class to do those things, but I want it known beforehand. Day one, and I know a lot of people don't teach new material on day one because people are moving, but I'm one of those teachers that jumps right into it. Day one, they are going to get a what is agriculture education PowerPoint, and it uses the Venn diagram, the classroom, FFA, and SAE to introduce them to what they're looking at for the year ahead. This slide, the next 3 slides are the SAE section of that. And I really actually take 20 minutes to discuss SAEs during this time on the first day. And I tell all the good fun stories, like the kid that raised mice as her SAE, or kid who hunted turtles and sold them to Japan for soup, okay? All those fun ones. There are now over 40 areas you can participate in, and by that I mean the proficiency areas. And again, they're getting this the very first day. It says, you know, we'll learn more about SAEPs later, okay? As far as pre-knowledge, I also, the very first unit I teach about is agriculture, and they have defined what production is, what service is, what processing is, and what marketing is. Now, Brett's going to talk about research later, and that's a very important part of SAEs. They haven't learned that at this point because I think research falls under all 4 of these, and so it can get a little confusing. If I'm discussing this with a new first year older member, then I definitely am going to cover research in that. I have taught a lesson on writing SMART goals at this point, and this lesson falls in the middle to the end of my FFA unit. Sometimes I've covered proficiencies and proficiency areas first. Sometimes I have not. It depends on the kids and their learning ability. But every time we've discussed FFA degrees. So they've heard the word SAE on the syllabus, they've heard it that first day, and they've heard it through these degrees. So it's not completely new, but they, it's something to spark their interest by that point. So what do I teach about SAEs? First, I teach the definition of SAEs, and I teach it as a 4-part program. SAEs, number 1, are supervised. Number 2, they happen outside school hours. Number 3, they relate to agriculture. Number 4, they have records. That's exactly how I define it to the kids. At no point have I said the word livestock, plant, anything at this point, because I want them to know that if they can make all 4 of these happen, they can do it as their SAE. Okay, so then we go more in depth. The question, is it supervised? And the way I present this to the kids is, if you had a question, who would you ask? And I usually pick the girl with the best handwriting, send her up to the board, and she writes down their answers, and we just popcorn them out. Normal answers I get, I'd ask my parents, I'd ask my boss, I'd ask my ag teacher. Sometimes you have to poke and prod them to get them to say that. You also get some really funny answers, like I'd ask my second cousin Earl, or I'd ask, but you put them all up there. It's popcorn. These are all people that you would consider supervising the kids, okay? The next thing I'd say, is that person welcome to come check on your project at any time? And as they shout out, I say, why not? A true supervisor can come out pretty much any time and feel comfortable. I make spot checks all the time and don't even, call or anything. There are only 2 projects that in my years of teaching, that I have not done that with. One, a kid worked when I was in Arkansas. A kid worked for a Tyson chicken farm. Their biosecurity was extremely thorough. So his boss would send me pictures and discuss with that. The other one was a young man kept his goats at his uncle's place. The first time I showed up without asking to that place, the uncle stole my keys, locked me out of my truck, and then showed up 30 minutes later with the keys at the end of a shotgun barrel. I didn't go back there again without 3 or 4 people with me, including the kid. So that's is it supervised. The next thing we talk about is it happens outside school hours. I wrote school here. I was just being very quick this morning putting this together, but it happens outside school hours. And we start with the discussion of the places it can happen. We talk about their homes. We talk about their work. We talk about places they've volunteered. I have a young lady, she has now won 2 state proficiency awards for her service to the National Institute of Developmental Delays. And she never earned $1 once at these. But so we talk about places they volunteer. We talk about their options at school, especially when I taught in Kansas. That was an extremely low income location. And a lot of those kids, when they went home, they were in charge of 3 or 4 siblings. They had to put dinner on the table. Parents worked 2 or 3 jobs. So we had to make them aware that if they wanted to come before school and spend 10 minutes helping in the greenhouse or 20 minutes working in the shop, that was acceptable for their SAE. They may never win an award doing that, but they might. I've had greenhouse managers that have won proficiency awards, been 2nd or 3rd in the state. Then we discussed if their chosen place had resources to help them, such as tools, fences, etc. We discussed what time they're going to do this. This is an awesome time to throw out there. This is mid-September. I'm usually getting to this if I'm having a good year, or early October. But this is a great time to be like, no, you cannot take care of a show pig in the 5 minutes between the end of softball practice and working at home, and eating dinner. So we discuss when the time. Then they fill out this worksheet. Okay, so this worksheet, make that go away. They write a description of their SAE. If they don't know what their SAE is going to be, I give them something original, like they're going to produce jams or jellies, just something that they can play through these worksheets and maybe fill them out later on their own. But they look through these worksheets, and these worksheets, they fill out who's going to supervise, what each person's going to provide. Where is it done at? Then they're going to talk about their time. I have them write down when it's going to start, when it's going to end. Some of them, they're going to be doing this their whole lives. Some of them, it's going to be done when they're done being an FFA member. Okay, so they fill all of that out. And then we go to the 3rd section, which is it related to ag? Oh, you can't see the worksheet? Okay. Hold on just a second. I'll try to pop that sheet up. Sorry. So the worksheet. Looks like this. Can we all see that now? Okay. Where is it? What is it? Blah, blah, blah. So, fudge. I have 2 more worksheets I am going to talk about real quick. The next section is it ag? When we talk about is it ag, I make them tell me if their SAE falls under production, processing, service, or marketing, and fill out this worksheet. I have them find the proficiency area, which if we haven't discussed proficiency areas, we discuss, we talk about proficiencies, and we play a memory game. And then we do 5 skills. And those 5 skills, you can find those skills online. They're the national standards. The national AFR standards, you can find them on AET real quick. The next thing that we need that gets covered I'm having issues with Zoom, but the next thing that gets covered is the is how do you keep records on it? And when we talk about how you keep records, we talk about time, we talk about money, and we talk about the research projects and their ability to keep records. Having said all that, and I'm trying to make this work, they use that to fill out the measuring sheet, worksheet, which is right here. I have a lot of stuff on my screen right now, but they fill out the measuring worksheets. Okay, what am I measuring, et cetera, et cetera. I will send these to y'all later, but the short and long of that is I take that to AET. I use that in AET, and let me show you one thing, I'll get done. Within AET, they've already filled out their profile, but I take that, and from there, I go into this project manager. They fill out a new project for whatever they're going to do, and they go into this planning area. The first section is the description that they wrote at the top of each of those pages, how they're related to ag and how they make up SMART goals. The time investment comes straight off that timesheet, and then the financial investment is measuring the measuring sheet and the learning objective. Okay. Comes from those skills that we had them learn. So you have all of that, and I don't.
Okay, and Tanya, I'm gonna go ahead and interrupt you if you don't mind. We need to keep moving forward. What I'll encourage everyone to do, I really appreciate this is a lot of good information, and it's a lot to try and get through in a short amount of time, but we need to move forward with Mr. Walden. Tanya, if you will maybe drop, if you're willing to, drop a contact information in the chat, and then you saw there were people interested in receiving the PowerPoint and some of those copies of the worksheet. And so with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and transition us, and I appreciate you, and all that information is really good, but we're gonna go ahead and move on to Mr. Walden, who's gonna talk to us about GOAT SAEs. And so we're passing it on to you.
All right, my name is Jonathan Walden. I'm the ag teacher at Allen. This is my 14th year to be teaching ag. And just like Mason said, I'm going to talk about show goats and managing a team and kind of having a team mentality. If you ever seen my crew at a lot of our shows, I mean, we're dragging probably 20 to 30 head of goats to any jackpot. And I mean, it's literally a team. And I mean, we'll have 15, 20 stands set up, and we're going to go through on how to build something like that, and maybe even just managing. And you could take a lot of these ideas and apply it to your judging teams or even just your classroom management, especially for some of you guys that are rookies or just beginning out. So I'm going to tell you right now, whenever you start out, it's tough. it's not going to be easy to go in and build that trust with them families, especially on the show side. The show side, you're going to have some families that are way gung-ho, and then you're going to have some families that are really dependent upon you, and that's okay either way. Probably the first thing I'll tell you to do is do the little things. There's going to be some of them families that are all on their own, and if you go to the ring with them and you're just holding the halter, hey, that's great. And then there's going to be some of them families that you got to make sure they make the class and don't miss where they should be. Communication, text messages is probably the biggest way I communicate with my families, especially in group text messages. I'm getting better about using the Remind app just because then I make sure that I don't miss anybody. Before I start here and keep going, if you have any questions, just unpause or unmute yourself and just ask a question. I mean, you can ask questions over in the comments side, but I would rather you just pause me up and we can hit whatever you want to talk about. But so I use the Remind app a lot of times. I mean, talking about, hey, you're going to go to this show, you're going to go to here or there. If you're wanting to build this team mentality, it's not going to be, oh, well, I'm just the ag teacher for the county show, for maybe your district show, OIE, and that's it. You're not ever going to get there on that team mentality. I mean, you're going to have to go to jackpots. You're going to have to do them things. Just like if you're taking a team to be competitive, you're going to have to go hit some interscholastics before you go to state to get good, and also build up that trust and understanding with them families. So with them families, arrive when they do, leave after them. There's some of these places that I'll see, that the families will show up on their own and the ag teacher will come in right when the show starts. And then they might leave early. And I understand, sometimes you got a life to live too. But if anything, put in the time, put in the effort. Offer to haul them. If you have a nice truck and trailer, there's 2 or 3 families that I never haul their livestock, but I offer every time for the last 3 years I've offered, just because I don't want them to ever say, well, he's never offered to haul me, but he hauls the little boy down the street. So if you're always offering, they'll appreciate that. Like I was talking about with my group, when we pull up to a show, we'll all set up in one area together. Again, that's building that team mentality. I really don't like my families going off and having one family on this end of the barn, this family on this other end of the barn. Whenever you're starting out, you might be more suggestive, like, hey, why don't we all set up over here? But after you kind of get a team mentality going, then families will start to understand, hey, Walden said we're going to get over here, or he's going to go save us a spot, whatever. And they'll just kind of learn to follow your lead on that. Whenever we get to the shows, I mean, we'll take up and plug in our blowers and I'll put out all of our stands. And typically it's not like, oh, well, that's little Johnny's stand, I can't use that. I mean, if little Johnny's showing a cross at the end of the day and we had Dorsets to get ready, we use little Johnny's stand for this other little kid to get stuff ready. I mean, again, it's a team mentality, and it just takes time to get that going. I guess it's probably maybe more of a dirty word, but and it took me a while to get okay with it, especially as a younger teacher. But if your families are having jocks help them get ready, or maybe specific breeders help them get their stuff ready, that's okay. Because one of 2 things is either going to happen. If they have a bad jock or a bad breeder, they're going to eventually get burned and come back to you. Or if they have somebody that's really good at helping, and if you can kind of get inside of that group, that might make you some connections where you might be able to find some livestock at some places. Or you can ask for some pointers, because I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of different things, especially when we're talking about like wormers and off-label use, like on Baytril, like to maybe get the coccidiosis and things like that out of animals. I mean, there's a lot of little tricks and stuff like that on health that you can learn from them guys. So don't be afraid and be intimidated by them guys. If anything, hang around, be known, do the little things. And if that family's happy with that, that's okay, because that's where they're going to get to whatever their goal is. If it's to win OYE or win the county, that's great. Now, if you're a guy that can win OYE or your county on your own and that family doesn't trust you, that's okay, because once you beat them a time or two, they're going to probably come back to you and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so or Madam So-and-so, will you help me find my animals next year? So that'll eventually happen for you. Take advantage and learn the basics. If you're not comfortable, getting sheep, goats, pigs, cattle ready, you're always going to have some of them families that they don't know what they're doing either. And you can learn with them. They will not be mad at you if you mess up clipping their calf or clipping their doe or whatever. The only way you're ever going to learn is by getting in there and doing it. Whenever I moved to Colgate, we were clipping about 10 to 15 does to go to every show. And I mean, and I do a lot of them in about a night and a half or in 2-day setting. And you either learn to get good and quick, or you're going to figure out you're going to do something else. I guess just run the slick shears over them and get it done. Probably the number one thing that I'll ask my families is, what's your budget or what's your goals? Don't just let them say, well, here's $1,000. I want a good goat. You don't let them get by with that. You need to say, okay, well, what's your goal? If it's for them to win some classes, some jackpots, or maybe win the county, hey, that's some goals we can handle. And then you can kind of say, okay, money-wise, that fits. We can do that. Or exactly what breeders you can go to with that amount of money. And there's some breeders, there's no point even donning the door, because you're not going to find anything in the pen, even in the coal pen that's sick, that's going to fit that budget. So know the budgets, know their goals. And again, after you've been there for 2 or 3 years and you keep saying them words, goals, and budgets, they're going to start understanding where you're coming from and that you're trying to help them on meeting their goals. Probably one thing that I could tell a lot of you guys, I mean, some of you have children, but if you wouldn't buy it for your own kid, then don't buy it for another kid, is probably my rule of thumb. I mean, I'll buy animals from, really low end budgets to some high end budgets. And literally if you'll go flip enough rocks or turn over enough rocks, enough places, you're going to find animals that'll fit them budgets. And it also depends on the time of the year on, what that budget's going to be, if money will fit that. Animals will get cheaper certain times of the year because the breeders are tired of feeding them or whatever. Be loyal to the breeders. That'll get you a long ways really quickly. Don't expect to go to the very high end of the high end breeders and go buy something and think that, they're going to be loyal to you and help you out. I mean, if you got that kind of budget, great. But if you got just kind of a middle of the road budget, go to them breeders that are kind of middle of the road, that are just growing and learning themselves. And if you get in there and your kids are doing well for them breeders, and you keep being a repeat customer over 2 or 3 years, they're gonna help you out on some price breaks. Or I've had a breeder one time say, hey, I got a goat. He's not much. Come look at him. If you want him, I'm not even gonna charge you. Just take him home to a kid. And that goat was Division I champion at Tulsa 3 years ago. So, you just never know. There's gonna be guys that'll help you out because they want to get there also. I see too many times where guys show up to a place, buy something, and then you never go back again. Stay loyal, and it'll pay off in the end for you. That's about everything that I have to cover on that. So, if anybody has any questions or whatever, just let me know, and I'll put my information over in the chat side. And I know that wasn't really about goats in detail. If you want to know more about that, you can call me, text me, send a private message, whatever. There's no secrets. Whatever I tell and share with my families, I do in my own barn, and I share with everybody else. And it's literally, you're just going to have to outwork us, is what I tell all my families. Whoever's working the hardest is going to probably have the most success. So
that's a lot of great information from Mr. Walden. What I appreciate is that it's really, a lot of that is applicable to all the livestock species. And so if you have some questions, we're going to keep moving forward, but submit those through the chat, and then we'll try and open up some time at the very end after Mr. Schmidt goes to be able to give a little bit of time, but we want to make sure we stay on track. So we're going to go ahead and transition over to Dr. Scott from Bethel. He's going to talk to us about AgriScience Research SAE. So Dr. Scott, it is all yours.
There we go, unmuted. Thanks, guys. Again, Mason, appreciate you asking me to be a part of this. See a lot of new faces and a lot of new names, so I look forward to meeting a lot of you folks when we get out and about. Mason went ahead or asked me to kind of visit a little bit about ag research and probably more specifically the AGRISCIENCE fair, which is, we'll see if Zoom's going to do what it's supposed to do. There we go. Hopefully everybody see the slideshow. Did it come up like it was supposed to? Somebody nod your head. Tanya, can you see anything? All right. I can't see. There we go over there. You guys, first of all, I uploaded this over in the chat side. You can download this as it's a PDF file. There's, I don't know, 28, 29 slides. I'm not going to cover them all in this time, but I wanted them there for you guys to kind of just look at, to utilize at a later time. And just kind of going through, a lot of this stuff is pulled right off the national website from the standpoint that you can go in and look up AGRISCIENCE and things like that. And I'm going to pull out some of the things I want you guys to really kind of burn in your brain a little bit, hopefully take home from my part of this with you guys like that. But what I want to stress to everybody, especially our new teachers that are here and the ones that are kind of going, oh gosh, I don't know, because believe it or not, yeah, I look old. You can see I have all this gray hair. I've been involved in teaching agriculture for way more years than I want to admit. This is starting my 8th year to be an ag teacher in Oklahoma. But I remember what it was like to start here, and all this stuff gets thrown at you and you're just like, I can't handle this. What's going on? But the one thing I want to stress to everybody about AGRISCIENCE research projects, or research projects in general, is that every one of you is doing research on a daily basis. And we can go, into a lot of examples. And you're like, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. You go try a new smoothie place they opened in Stillwater. You like that one over the one you used to go to? Guys, that's something as simple as a research project. You tried 2 different products, decided which ones you like. Those of you that have grown up showing livestock animals, growing plants, doing anything, you're always tweaking something, changing the diet, going to a different feed company based on observations you made. I use this fertilizer and my plants all died. Maybe I won't use that fertilizer the next time. Something as simple as, what kind of shirts do you like to wear? The ones that are on sale usually. But my point is, some clothes fit you better than other clothes. That's a research project. And that's kind of how I approach it when I start talking to kids about research in general. We're asking questions. Why does this happen? Why does that happen? You are formulating a hypothesis when you're asking yourself that. I fed my pigs this feed last year, wasn't available, so I had to switch feeds. Well, I saw better rates of gain, quicker on, things like that. Well, why did that happen? Set up a simple little project to figure it out. Go buy you some feeder pigs for fun, feed them out, one feed, shelled corn, see what happens. That's a research project. It does not have to be something, horribly in depth. When we talk about the different age categories in a little bit, I'll let you, kind of realize that these younger divisions, they don't expect it to be nuclear science, for your 8th graders, things like that. These are pretty simplistic things we look at. So just keep telling myself, yeah, I do research every day. I ask myself what happens, okay? I'm going to go through this quickly. Like I said, I uploaded the file. You guys can print it out. You'll have it all as we go through. But you're asking yourself a question, just like I said earlier. How, what, when, where, who, which, why, all these things. I would, venture, and this is not an idea that anybody hadn't thought about, but there could be a million research projects this year on which is the most comfortable mask to wear when I have to go in public, if that gets there. So a lot of comparisons there. There's a place for one that's not even doing, when we talk about social systems, you're gathering data, you're asking people questions. So you're not even doing animals, plants, welding trials, anything like that. It's survey data. So there's a place for everything like that. Basically, science fair, if you're going to go on with these research projects into trying to do a science fair project with them, you need to be asking questions that you can measure. so you can come up with an answer and be able to present some results. Examples here: something grew bigger. Why? Change colors, displayed a temperature change. Okay? A lot of things like that you can look at and talk about. Biggest thing a lot of people forget to do or don't do is, when you kind of come up with an answer, dig through some of the old projects. Email some of us folks that have been involved in Oklahoma AgriScience for a long time. We're not going to remember every project, but we'll remember a lot of them and say, yeah, they did this, but tweak it this way and you're good to go. Okay? What did they ask? What were the questions? Rather than starting from scratch, this is what I want to stress to a lot of you guys. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. You can go to the AgriScience fair at the state level, go to different places, go to the science fairs in your high schools. If you have any of your middle schools, go to a science fair, look at it, look at a project and say, well, that was kind of cool. I wonder why they didn't think about this. There's your whole research project. Tweak something they did. That happens in science constantly, all the time. You're going to ask this, construct a hypothesis, which we've all heard, but an example: if I do this, then this will happen. I'm making a statement. If I think I'm going to do it this way, I think my plants will grow better. My pigs will have a better efficiency. Things like that. So you want to be able to ask a question and predict what you think is going to happen. There's nothing wrong with that, because you need to think, if I do this, I think this is going to happen. And the biggest thing I'll stress that kids have a real hard time grasping is, just because you do a project and what you thought was going to happen didn't happen, that doesn't mean your project failed. You just answered a question, okay? Just because you thought it would be that way, big deal. Didn't have to be, okay? Test your hypothesis by doing an experiment. Don't let anybody get whiplash as we go through, okay? One thing I want to stress in this slide to you, especially when you start out in the research area and trying to plan a project. Even if your kids are older versus your 8th graders, you need to try to design a project where you're really only changing one variable, okay? So that means everything else in my experiment needs to be the same. Sometimes with, plant systems, real easy in a way. The plants are all in the same greenhouse, all the same temperature, all the same water, all the same humidity. Everything's the same, except I give this type of feed versus that kind of feed. All I did was change one variable, because then it makes it a simplistic project that kid can address. This is what I did, expecting this result. So until you get real comfortable with it and feel like you can explain it to your kids, you need to limit those variables the best you can, okay? Analyze your data and draw a conclusion. This is something a lot of people stress over. Mason and Jeremy and I and Tanya, a lot of us that have done this, we don't have secrets. You want to get a hold of me and say, I don't have a clue how to start analyzing my data. I'm going to send you straight to Excel, show you the data analysis package, and tell you, here's how you run it, okay? It is not hard. You click a set of data and say, I need the standard error of the mean. Click, and it gives it to you. So don't stress over being able to analyze the data. And then you just look and see what it says and help your children come up with, what do you think and what do they think happened, okay? Slip on that one. Again, I gave you guys all this, so I knew I was going to kind of fly through it a little bit. Biggest thing here is, once we've done it all, we've analyzed it all, we've looked at the data, we've come up with our answers, if you will, you are going to have to write a paper, or the kids are. And again, depending on their division, how old they are, the younger reports are, for our 8th graders, 9th graders, are a little more simplistic. When you get to that senior level, they do get a little more in depth. But they do resemble, if all of us had to look at a scientific paper somewhere in college, whether we paid attention or not, but the format of introductions, materials and methods, results, conclusions, pretty straightforward, okay? Again, don't get whiplash. Big thing I want to tell you right here, again, this isn't a brag, but just telling you, having judged the state level, the national level, several of y'all have done that. We're interested in finding results, I guess have a typo, regardless of whether or not they support the hypothesis. So just make sure your kiddo knows, we want to hear what they did. What was the work and what came out of it? And we'll kind of ask them some questions and lead them down that road a little bit, okay? Jumping a few more, don't get real crazy here, but just to remind everybody again, you can go to the National FFA website, get in the AGRISCIENCE. It shows you all these categories. I'm going to show you the big 6. I'm looking, and Mason looks like I'm about 9 minutes, 27 seconds, something like that, so I'm getting close. But animal systems, environmental, natural resources, they used to be split, they're combined. Food products, plants, power structural, social science. You know, I can tell you in my 7 years of doing research projects at Shawnee, I've had kids in all divisions. Yes, even food products and processing, you know, we jumped off in there and tried that, okay? I went ahead, and the slides following this, again, you don't even try to watch real quick. I pulled up some descriptions of them for you, gave you some examples just to kind of stimulate your brain as you think about them. I'm scrolling through those quick so I can get to the last little division I want to talk to you about. But here's all the different divisions and what they are as far as categories you can compete in, research you can do in. Here are the different divisions. There are 6 of them. Big thing, stress. I have found with my younger kids that if you can get them to do a team, sometimes you have trouble with who's doing more work or less work or this or that. Y'all know that. But they feel a lot more comfortable when there are 2 of them standing up there at the board talking when the judges come around. So again, in Oklahoma, obviously it's 8th grade and up. The Division 1 and 2s are 8th graders. Division 3, 4 for 9th and 10th graders, and then 5 and 6 for juniors and seniors. And all of these kids at the state level are beyond impressive. But honestly, there's some kids I've seen even in the 10th grade at state presentations here that just will awe you, you know, just at their ability to get done what they do. Last but not least, you do need to do a science fair board. There's specific requirements of it: 3 feet high, 4 feet wide, no more than 30 inches deep. This is, you know, adhered to very, 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 very strictly at the national level. If you come in at 37 inches, you can ask Jeremy, you're DQ'd. Not that Jeremy got DQ'd, but we've seen it happen. So you're better off starting off this way at home. I'll just tell y'all right off, if you've not been to our state contest, when I started 7 years ago, 90% of the boards were the little trifold boards we bought from Hobby Lobby. We printed out things and we glued them on there. You go to the state contest now, most everybody has printed. Most of us do them in PowerPoints, different ways. We print them out on, you know, 3x4 boards that are professionally done. And, you know, it's give or take, you can get those. Jeremy, chime in if you don't. I mean, anywhere between 25 to 50 bucks usually per board will get something of high enough quality to print out that you can use for that. Big thing the kiddos need to know now is they keep logbooks and everything at home, the written reports, but now when they give presentations, there's no props, no handouts, no electronics, no logbooks, no anything. It's just an oral presentation for them when they get there, okay? If I can get this to work, I'll flip out of there and stop sharing. Tanya, I'm sure glad I didn't try to do yours and jump back and forth a lot. But again, I put my slideshow up over there. It's AGRISCIENCE Fair in Service. Y'all can print it out. When I quit talking, I'll type my new email in there for you guys. Anybody and everybody's welcome to email me, ask me questions. I know several of you on here have done these projects. I don't want to speak for Jeremy or Tanya or anybody, but, you know, I don't have any secrets. I don't do anything special or fancy. Email me, ask me. If you have an idea and want to bounce it off of me, shoot it to me. I won't steal it from you, I promise. But a lot of times, Jeremy and I both have had to do this. Tanya, I think, yeah, you had to one time, where when we're not sure what category it goes in, there's an avenue or opportunity that you can actually email stuff to National FFA. They send it out to the committee members across the country, and they'll come back and tell you this belongs in plant systems, or you really need to go social with this. And you get something back from them. So at your state level, you can say, no, this goes in social per nationals. Because unfortunately, we've all seen, not ours, thank goodness, projects make it to the national level and get thrown out of the category because they did not belong there. And the national committee just says, sorry, you're out. And that's after they've made it through state and everything. So whenever in doubt, ask some other teachers. We'll all share what we know with you, but we'll also point you that direction and say, let nationals give you their definitive statement on where it goes. Okay? So if you have any questions, I'll put up my email with my PowerPoints up there. Good luck with it. Don't be afraid of it. This ag research is actually a really, really, really fun area to work in with your kids. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was some great info. I know it's really fast, but this is a great way to connect with Dr. Scott and learn that he's a great resource to talk to in the future. As we transition to our last presenter, I want to mention at the conclusion of Jeremy's presentation, we're going to drop a link in the chat to just a quick eval form that's through Google Forms. That's just so we can get some feedback for ways in which we can continue to improve this as we go forward into future sessions. And so if you'll take the time to complete that, we really appreciate it. And then we'll also open it up after the conclusion to, if you have some other questions and you want to discuss, I'll end the record and we can open it up to that. So as we go to our last presenter, Jeremy Schmidt from Edmond, he's going to talk to us about some early preparation for students that might be interested in degrees and award applications, some things to be prepared for that. So we'll hand it off to him.
All right. Thank you guys for sitting with us this afternoon. And I hope that I will be able to show you guys just some information that will help you to get prepared for whether it be for the state degree, American degree, and proficiency awards. And by no means am I an expert on this, but after 15 years of making mistakes and so forth, I think I might have a little bit of stuff that will help to make your job easier in getting prepared for this. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, and this is probably the biggest thing that even now, I know all ag teachers have problems with that, and that is picture quality and what should the kids be doing. First of all, 99% of all photos taken when you're dealing with any type of award application, portfolios, whatever it is, it needs to be landscape. Landscape, whenever it goes into your AET file or it goes into that proficiency award, is going to fit essentially into their box. And you'll also run into the problem, you have these kids that generally take portrait, I guess it's because it's selfies or whatever it is, and then they go in there and they stretch the picture on you, and you get this picture that looks absolutely terrible. Sometimes you can crop them, sometimes you can't. So make sure they know from day one as an 8th grader or as a freshman, and refresh it every year, that as you're taking pictures of your project or activities that you're doing, that those are being taken as a landscape photo. Picture should be action. The picture that I have here, I believe, was taken at a speech contest some years ago. And this is not a picture that I would really want to see on any type of award application. It's just 4 people standing there cheesing. It should be taken with them presenting or something of that type. Pictures taken in a timely manner. This has happened with my daughter as well. She applied for a proficiency award, entrepreneurship, equine, and she actually was a national finalist. But I have her out there, and we're trying to pick days where one day it's sunshine, one day it's cloudy, bring a change of clothes, and we're trying to put together what should be 4 years worth of timeline in essentially 1 week. So a judge that really pays attention to that is going to realize, okay, well, here's a project that should have been occurring over 4 years, yet all these photos are taken her senior year. Pictures display the scope of the project. So you want your picture to be directed in terms of what all things occur. Don't try to be too specific about what's going on with the picture itself, and I'll go over that some more in a minute. Pictures should also show growth, which I'll talk about here in a minute, and make sure the students are in proper clothing and personal protection equipment. We run into that problem quite often. If I have a kid that's doing landscaping, which is big in Edmond, and they're outside weed eating in shorts and no safety glasses. So a judge sees that, and every judge is going to react differently. You might have one of those 3 judges that sees that as a fatal flaw and they're moved to the bottom of the stack. So you want to try to reduce those problems as much as possible. Here's a young lady that was a national finalist some years ago, and I pulled 2 of her pictures off from the actual application. And one of her early photos that she received was just of her mucking stalls, because when she started this job that she had, the first of 2, that was all she did, is she went in and she essentially cleaned stalls, fed, and water. Now, as her project developed and she got older, she actually started to work at Remington Park in conjunction with her other job. And you can kind of see here where she's moved up to the status of helping with the actual urine test to make sure that the horses weren't doping or whatever you want to call it. Some other things that we've had mentioned to us from judges that they really liked about these photos is you don't have a kid that's out there cleaning a stall and they've got all their makeup on and they've got everything completely perfect about themselves. They actually look like that they're out doing work on a farm. Common picture mistakes, and once again, I pulled these directly off some of our old proficiency applications, and one of these was actually went all the way to nationals. The one here on the left, well, you guys tell me, what are they doing? They're picking through grass. What is the point of that? What are they actually going to look through every single piece of grass that they have cut and make sure there's no bugs in it? Are they counting weeds? What's going on here? Clearly, you can tell that this is a staged photo, and it's also was a portrait photo instead of a landscape. The next one, his dog must be his farm assistant, and once again, I have no idea what it is that he is doing, and this did go on to nationals. That's the only photo that I could get from him. What are you going to talk about in this caption? Once again, is he checking for bugs, moisture content? Make sure that the photos that are taken can allow you to write a caption that explains the scope of the project. The next thing that I was going to talk about is selecting the proper category is important when adding activities. This might be the single most frustrating thing that I do as an ag teacher when it comes to state degrees. State degrees is one of the primary times at which you run into the scenario where the degree itself is going to auto-populate your 20 activities, no more, no greater than 10 from each category. Well, our kids will go in there and they add them over the 4 years, and then we create the state FFA degree and they've got 5 activities on there. What happened to them? Well, then what ends up happening is I have to go back and find them, rechange them so that they will fit into the right categories. There are a few of these that we use on that I use on a commonly. The time and classroom activities I don't use. Time in your AET projects, I use that primarily for AGRISCIENCE, and then I believe it's called foundational is the other one. And then time and competition activities, as well as time and other FFA activities, are going to be your 2 primary uses for your state FFA degree. Time and competition activities will include CDE and LDE. I don't think it's changed. Unfortunately, under that column, you're going to see stock show. And a lot of kids are going to use it, and it's not going to come up on your state FFA degree. They have to go into time and other FFA activities. The next problem that you run into that I'm going to talk about very quickly, because I'm already starting to run out of time, is the levels. That's another problem you run into. How do the kids classify this? County is obviously going to be the first one that counts towards a state degree. The second one, if a kid goes to jackpot, whether that be speech or livestock exhibition, do not let them call it an invitational. It will not show up on the state FFA degree. It must be classified as state. Okay, it must be classified as state. The next one's going to be region. and then area. And then once again on nationals, you have 2 options, national finalist and just nationals. And you have to use the nationals selection in terms of the level. The chapter stuff is also very important, and I'll talk about that a little bit more here on my next couple slides. I wanted to give you some examples. Once again, these were pulled off from either state degrees that we have already done, and these kids have already received the state degree. On the left-hand side of the slide, you notice that in this section where it talks about the description, only once did they actually put a description, first place speaker. Those should be filled out as they're doing your local activities, your chapter activities. They should be including descriptions of what they did, what was their involvement, was there a placing? It needs to have some kind of description there. And make sure that I made this mistake. It was my fault. I told the kids it don't matter. And about 4 years later, they start getting a state degree, and I start reading at some of these, and you'd be surprised what they wrote. We had to go back and delete them because they were sometimes pretty bad. So make sure that's filled out there. The next part on the fairs and shows, you'll notice immediately that the only thing they pull from that description is the year. The year, so I'll have kids that drive me nuts over, okay, what date did we show at OYE? Was it on Friday? Was it on Saturday? What do I put there? It doesn't matter. It matters 2019. 2018, whatever it might be. And then another thing that I know that Rose, for any of you in Central District, she has wanted to see from us is, if you'll notice under the first thing under career development events, it says Area Junior CDE Contest 2016. What was it? Did they do electricity? Did they do FBM? So be more specific about exactly what's happening at that time. Agricultural experience design. This has gotten me in trouble, and I'm really going to speed up. The design, make sure that you're identifying your show projects by when it is you're finishing. So OYE 2020, hogs, whatever it might be. That's at least on like your show projects especially. Now, obviously, your breeding programs, those can go over the entirety of the 4 years, the 5 years. The next thing that I wanted to mention, and I should have showed on the other one, I had a student a couple of years ago that did a lot of stocker cattle, and we created a stocker cattle enterprise, and 500-600 cattle later, we came back and we were told we needed to break that down into stocker cattle, period. So summer 2017 stocker cattle. So we had to go back out and divide all that out and redivide it. Took forever. Regular data entry and memos. You can see here, this once again was taken off one of our kids' projects. They spent $250 an entire year to feed 2 head of cattle. I need to show cattle instead of hogs because it costs a lot more. So is it truthful? Is it not? It needs to be truthful with what they're doing. This student did a much better job, almost too precise because it gets harder to look at. Plus there's some decimals on here. They broke down exactly when they got it. They broke it down into the individual categories, which can be important. Be specific when completing the scope. So the scope here shows that caring for animals and conducting training programs. What did they really do? They did not get that filled out so that we know exactly what's going on, or break it down into, if there's 254 hours there, they spent 100 of it actually caring for animals, and they did 154 hours of doing training with horses, groundwork, whatever it might be. Here's another example of how to break that down a little bit more precise, so that when a judge looks at this, they know exactly what's going on. They have a better idea of the scope. Yearly checks. With the yearly checks, we're going to look here, and you've got 3 of them that are important. The clipboard is what I refer to as the scope. Do that at the end of each year. Line chart is the end of year evaluation, which I don't even have enough time to talk about, but essentially you can revalue projects. And then tractors allow you to assign assets. Be aware of this, outcome efficiencies. They need to be measurable. These are some of our newer ones, or our old ones on the left. Percentages. What's the basis of your percentage? It really is not measurable. because percentage for each person is different. And then finally, on the calf production, as we got better, you can actually see numbers and changes. Okay, well, thank you guys. That's my time period. So thank you for listening to me. I shared this PowerPoint. Hopefully it'll be helpful to you guys. And if you have any questions, I will share my information so that you can send those to me.
Okay, thank you very much. I know we are near the end of our meeting. I just sent through the chat a link to a Google form that you can complete really quickly just to kind of give us a quick evaluation of this session. I'll also very quickly share with you the links to all the upcoming sessions that have been scheduled. Remember, we have 5 more sessions in the coming weeks over various subjects. But before I do anything, I want to say thank you to our 4 presenters. That was really, really great information. And now you have 4 people that you can talk to. Anybody that's taught in Oklahoma long enough knows that there's a family atmosphere to that, and teachers are out to help other teachers. And so that's really the ultimate goal of this session and of all the sessions that we have is teacher-led, so that even in the short amount of time that they're trying to get through, and I know they all felt like they were flying through this, you now know a person that you can connect to. And so we really appreciate all of the information that the teachers presented. If you have some questions, they've shared all their information to you. I'm going to drop in one more of those PDF files so that you can see that. If you need to access information to any of these other teachers, reach out to me or any of us on the STAR committee as well. But with that, if you have any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording soon. But we want to honor everybody's time, and it is 2:01 according to my watch. And so I appreciate everybody, but that concludes this first session.
Thanks, Mason.
Tanya, I had a quick question about doing the intro to SAEs.
Yes.
Have you thought through what that's going to be like digitally, or like how you're going to try to do that through distance learning?
I haven't gotten to that class yet. I'm still working on my ag mechanics class. I've got my communications class done and my sophomore class, but I've not gotten to this yet. But I am assuming that I will use a lot of Google Forms and Google Classroom, but also last year we had to send that. We had to do everything paper-based and send it out through our post office. Teeny tiny school, apparently it's safe for them to go to the post office all in the same day. But, and so it'll be something similar to that.
One thing I would probably be remiss if I didn't mention, and I know many of us in this chat are probably familiar or have started to familiarize ourselves with the SAE for All resource. That curriculum is something that has been created, and I think it's something I'm going to lean pretty heavily on, given that we are going to teach virtually, at least at some point, because there's a lot of different modules. It really seems useful for getting students started on a foundational SAE. And so I just dropped the link to that where people can go, and if you haven't seen that before, it's something I haven't used in class extensively yet because it's still a relatively new resource, but I think it's something that can be pretty valuable. So.
Hey Mason, it's saying the Google form link that I don't have permission. I don't know if that's a problem.
Let me fix that. Thank you for saying so. Okay. Since I created this through our school account, it often defaults to that, protecting it. So let me. Okay, I think I correct the setting there to where anyone should be able to complete that through the link, hopefully.
Yep, that worked.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions before we close the meeting? Okay. If you have any others, just reach out to any of us or the presenters, and we thank them once again. But I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting for today. Thank you all very much.